The memorial that we celebrate today of the two ancient martyrs, Cornelius and Cyprian, bring to mind kind of that struggle for unity that has been present in the church since the beginning of its history. We are talking in the first few centuries of the history of the church when these two figures appear in the midst of the persecutions, really, in the 3rd century that endured all the way to the 4th century. And in the opening prayer, there was one phrase that pretty much summed it up. These two saints, Cyprian and Cornelius, who spent their lives for the unity of the church. The unity of the church was also achieved through their blood. They're both martyrs. That's why I'm draped in red, the color red recalling the blood of the martyrs. Why the altar would normally also be draped in red as well, recalling that blood. The unity. I mean, right now, especially as the weeks start ticking away into the election, perhaps is when we feel and we see the least amount of unity in our country. And it keeps on getting more and more complicated. What happened in those first centuries of the church, and what were these saints have to do with unity? Well, Cornelius was elected Bishop of Rome, Pope, in the early centuries. And there was another priest of Rome who pretty much believed he had it in the bag. That, well, in so much words that he believed he was entitled to be the next Bishop of Rome. In fact, his predecessor had even promised him that he would be the next Bishop of Rome. And so when the election of the Bishop of Rome happened, to his surprise, one presbyter known as Novatian was not elected, but Cornelius was elected in his stead. A sudden indignation came over this Novatian. They said, how can this relatively somewhat unknown priest be elected and not me? Novatian pretty much was the secretary of the last pope. And again, why he would be kind of in a position to continue, and it was noticed usually second in command in a certain way. And it was already kind of custom that the one who was second in command would usually be elected as the next bishop. But Novatian was not. For whatever reason, those electors did not see in Novatian the one that should be a pope, and probably with good reason. So Novatian protested. And his way of protesting was to go to northern Italy, find an elderly bishop, make him a bishop, and go back and claim that he was the real Bishop of Rome, and the other one was an imposter. And, well, being a secretary, perhaps already he had his ways of writing letters and communicating, and immediately he communicated his consecration to everybody that he could find, and sent out letters before Cornelius could send out letters to inform what the election was. And so, throughout the church, in those early centuries, there was a confusion. Who is actually the Pope? Who is actually the Bishop of Rome? Because on one side I have this Novatian, who we've heard of, and yeah, we thought was a good candidate, saying that he is the Pope. And another one, Cornelius, who says that no, he was the real Pope and he was elected. Well, what to do? Especially if you're somewhere as far away as North Africa. Well, how do you figure that out? There was no recount, there were no hanging chads, nothing of that. And so, throughout this, well, the history of the church, and this is the way the Holy Spirit works, well, I think each one according to his fruits. And so, right away, one thing that distinguished Novatian was that he was kind of a rigorist in a certain way. And at the time of the persecutions, he believed that, well, only the real martyrs or the real saints were only those who actually died or suffered physically in the persecutions. And if you didn't suffer in the persecutions physically, then you weren't persecuted and you were a false Christian. In fact, all Christians should actually seek to be persecuted. And that's what you know is the real sign of the Christian. The fact is, a lot of the Christians at that time did try to evade the persecutions. Sometimes they paid the fee that they had to do. They might bribe the official to get them off their back. Other times they did renounce their faith, not in earnest, but just to get the officials off their back. And they were considered, well, traitors in a certain way. when some of them, and a large group of them, would ask to be readmitted into the church, they would ask for penance, reconciliation. Pope Cornelius, what ends up being the legitimately elected Bishop of Rome, says, well, yes, that's what reconciliation and forgiveness is for, and extends, through a severe penance, reconciliation to those lapsed Christians. Novatian, on the other hand, said impossible. They should be expelled from the site of the church for their disgrace to God. And so, how to deal with these? Because on one side you had a group that said they were forgiven, and on the other side you had a group that said that they were not. Well, the Pope also appealed to another major bishop in North Africa called Cyprian. And Cyprian had found the same problem in his church, in what was Carthage. In Carthage, a good number of Christians had also lapsed, trying to avoid persecution. In fact, the persecutions were worse in Africa than they were in Rome. And that group was seeking to find reconciliation. And Cyprian found the same problem too. Well, on the one hand, it is a grave sin what they've done, renounce the faith for convenience. And what does that say for those many who had suffered and actually died for the faith, those martyrs? But on the other hand, we're also called to forgive and reconcile. And so when he got Cornelius's reaction, Cyprian thought, he goes, I think that's the right way. That's the Catholic way to go. And he supported Cornelius. Novatian became so angered at that he formed his own church, the true Catholic Church, on the side. They lasted for quite a while, but eventually they disappeared. And so and at the end, both Cyprian and Cornelius suffered under the persecutions. And ironically, Novatian, who was so stalwart for those who were persecuted and to form a stand, evaded the persecutions and died a tranquil life in central Italy. And so we see these two who gave their lives and gave that Christian witness. Well, the cost of their lives assured the unity of the church. The real church is found with Cornelius, with Cyprian, and with what they taught. And likewise, in the same way, we might say today, and we might have heard it in many different ways, well, we may disagree, one is left, one is right, but we all bleed red. Well, true, we all bleed red. But more important for us in our life of faith, whether one is right or one goes left or whatever, is that we're bathed in the blood of Christ. Not so much that we all bleed the same color. We are bathed in that blood of Christ. We are united in communion with the blood of Christ that is present at that altar. What also brings us together is the blood of the faith of so many before us. Those martyrs that go back thousands of years. Those martyrs who are probably even more recent. And we have them even closer to us in our recent memory as well. That faith, that life which they've given for that faith, that blood, is also the blood that we're covered with. And that's what unites us and what should unite us always at the end. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.